I came to Abilene today to be sure the people of Abilene know what the plan is in the legislature, short-term, long-term, and also to kind of give an overview of what happened. We're having hearings this week, starting on Thursday and Friday, that I would really call more of an investigation than a hearing. We're going to get to the bottom of this and find what the heck happened. We have already some good information, which I'll share in a minute. And then we're going to fix it. We all understand this was unprecedented weather. If we gave winter storms category numbers like we do for hurricanes, this would have been a Cat 5 freeze. You set record snowfall, record temperatures out here, and so any system, anything mechanical would be strained in that situation. But ERCOT should have been better prepared. Everything along the line should have been better winterized, so that at least when we have an event this unprecedented, we do not have the, it wasn't a brownout, it was a blackout in many areas and long outages, as you know. So quickly, just a little overview of what went down. The highest that we know on record, to my knowledge, of energy demand by the public was 74,000 megawatts in August of 2020 during the heat of the summer. ERCOT was preparing for about 57,000 megawatts of being ready for the winter. But when the storm started that night by 9 o'clock or so, the demand for power was at an all-time record by consumers across the state of 69,000 megawatts. ERCOT had at that time a little over 70,000 megawatts. So it held until it got colder after 11, 12, 1, 2 in the morning. And slowly but surely, they began to lose power. So within hours, they went from 70,000 megawatts, 73,000, down to as low as the high 40s. So you got demand at 69,000. Now you only have power here at 48 to 52,000, depending on the hour. If you don't bring down the system and start turning off power, then you have a potential, a real potential, and it came very close to creating fires, maybe explosions at some point in some smaller areas, and having the entire grid go down for 90% of the state, because about 10% is not on the grid. And that would have meant we would be without power in the entire state of Texas for weeks or months, that it would take time to fix it and bring it back up to power. Some people call it a black start to bring it back up. You don't ever want to get to that situation. So that's what ERCOT was doing. Why did those plants fail? Lots of reasons. And again, we're having hearings to get to the bottom line, to get all of the information. But a number of things happened. The first thing is, we lead the nation in wind power. We're fifth in the world. It's China, United States, Germany, India, and Texas. But it's great on a day like today, but it doesn't help on our hottest days in the summer, and usually it doesn't help in the hottest days, and it doesn't help on the coldest days in the winter. So ERCOT estimated that they may get somewhere between 12 and 16% of their power from wind. Well, they made a mistake because the turbines froze, and they should have known that. And so they got very little wind power, maybe 7,000 megawatts. So when I hear from, and this, I'm not making a political issue out of this. This is not time for politics. This is time to address your concerns and be sure this doesn't happen again. But when you hear people, particularly some in-state and out-of-state, say, well, this would have been avoided if we had more renewables. No, it would have been even worse. We might not have power to lots of people today, because if we're at 23% on average of wind power, and that's average for the whole year, it was only 4, 6, 7, 8% during the storm. Again, it's great on nice days, but not when we need it. So if you triple the renewables, wind and solar in Texas, we would have only been able to generate about 20,000, 25,000 megawatts of power from them when we needed 50 or 60,000. So this is a good lesson for America and a good lesson for Texas, that renewables can be part of your portfolio, but you need a diverse portfolio. You need nuclear, gas power, clean coal. They're reliable. I can't turn on the wind, and I can't make the sun shine after the sun goes down. So the great lesson here for America and Texas on that issue. So first of all, you got less power from the wind turbines, and nothing from solar, of course, at night. We get very little from that anyway. And then you had the production people in West Texas primarily, but in other areas of Texas, who send the gas to the power generators. They started going down. We've now learned that one of the reasons they went down, their power was cut. That was a big mistake. And we've got to correct that in the future, because we now know when ERCOT tells your local companies that deliver the power to your home that they have to step back. We keep hospitals as a last resort, critical infrastructure like police and fire. We don't turn off the power in those areas. Well, you shouldn't be turning off the powers to the companies in West Texas that are producing the gas to go through the pipelines, to go to the generators that then produce the power. You also had natural gas doesn't freeze, but there's no question there were probably cracks in some pipelines that crisscrossed the state where condensation got in, and so those pipes froze. And then there were issues where at the plants, their equipment froze. And because the crews couldn't get out on the roads themselves to fix them, they sat there frozen for a while. So this was a perfect storm of a deadly storm. Again, if this were a hurricane, we'd call it a category. We would call this a Category 5 ice storm. The worst we've ever seen in Texas, or one of the worst. So that's a little bit of the why, but not an excuse. We asked ERCOT, were they ready? They told us yes. So either those who generate power that they sell did not inform them properly, or ERCOT did not inform us properly, but they said they were ready and they obviously weren't. There's been a lot of talk about what the legislature did back in 2011. I wasn't lieutenant governor then, but I was in the Senate. And I recall that we made these recommendations to winterize better and to be prepared for weather events after a hard freeze. But even then, back in 11, some people lost power for 4 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, but nothing like this. Well, since 2011, the system has worked. So when ERCOT tells us and the PUC tells us that the system can withstand the weather, we believe them. Well, now it's going to have to be trust but verify in the future. As lieutenant governor, for those of you who don't know, I'm president of the Senate. So I alone decide which bills come to the floor. I will not let a bill come to the floor this session that we look at these big macro issues that does not address these issues fully. There won't be any more recommendations or suggestions. It will be, you shall do this. There'll be a lot of things that we're going to have to do to revamp the system. Do we still use an entity like ERCOT? Do we change the board structure of ERCOT? I think that's definitely coming. What do? We're going to have to winterize better at some level. But we have to be sure that this doesn't happen again. Or in an extreme weather event like this, that we truly do have rolling brownouts, but not this type of blackout. And so I'm not going to let a bill come to the floor or take one from the House that doesn't fully do the job. I work with the governor, I work with the speaker, of course, and we're all in this together. We all have the same goal. But I'm personally putting this on my shoulders as the president of the Senate to get this done. If we have to use subpoena power to bring witnesses to the table, that's what we will do. We seldom, if ever, use that power. But we're not going to accept, I'm not going to accept companies sending me PR people or middle management people. I want the people there with the answers, or the owners of the company, or the presidents of the company, with their experts who can answer the questions. And if they're not willing to come, then we will subpoena them. Lastly, and then I'll take questions. A lot of people who have been receiving high bills, I've kind of panicked. Don't panic. I don't have the answers today, but we're going to figure out how to address this properly. Most of the people impacted by the high bills were on variable rate plans. So we've got to address that issue, because these people can't afford to pay $15,000 and $20,000 bills or super high bills. At the same time, lots of people have a flat rate plan. They pay more for energy, so we also have to be fair to them. If some people for the last 5-10 years have been paying less for energy and then got hit, there's going to have to be some way to address that properly. But we're not going to have our consumers in Texas get hit with these high bills. Again, I don't have that answer, how we're going to address it today. It's not an easy answer, but for right now, that's the one thing we're working on. The last thing we're also having to do is look at, we don't want to do anything that can upset the gas markets, that increase the price of gas again, it's still high, or collapse the commodities market on gas. So this is a very delicate issue, the short-term issue that we're working on right now to try to address this week, and then the longer-term issues, the winterizing, the revamping of the system. We can never let this happen again. And again, I'm putting the responsibility on my shoulders, working with the governor and the speaker to get this done right, to find out what the heck happened, and then fix it. Take any questions.
Yes, sir. Merle Capper, K-Town News. Thank you
Yes,
for being here.
sure.
What is your message to those in Texas and the big country who lost loved ones due to the cold and the power outages?
People, and I think they will now moving forward, sometimes haven't looked at winter storm events as the same type of natural disaster where we lose lives in a tornado or a hurricane. The difference here is that maybe not all of what happened, but much of what happened was a system failure. Yes, it was cold, but people died because of the cold or carbon monoxide poisoning, which was tragic, or from hypothermia, because they didn't have power, in part because the system failed. And I'm not pointing fingers at any one person or any one entity. I'm not making it political, but it's just obvious. And so those are the things that, for me, drive my determination to say, look, I'm just not going to let this happen. And I'm not going to let a bill come to the floor that doesn't address this. I'm not going to allow lobbyists in $5,000 suits to come and say, oh, no, it's really not that bad. No, people lost their lives, and every one was a tragedy. And some of the stories are terrible. And that's why we're going to make sure everyone understands no more shortcuts for them, no more suggestions to them. We're going to get the answers, see what we need to do. And my condolences to all those families. It was, it's heartbreaking. And I don't know that every life could have been saved. I mean, if someone, they were outside and something happened, but for those who tried to get warm and there was no place to get warm, that's a system failure.
Definitely. Follow-up question, sir. What are you doing to get additional FEMA funding for the counties that aren't getting it? I don't know if you heard,
Sure.
Abilene was denied individual, and I know our city is working real hard with Stan Lambert and Jody Arrington to get those fundings. What are y'all able to do for that?
Well, I know the governor is working on that every day, and he's talked to the president several times. Where we're not getting it, we're going to push to get it, because there's no reason, in my view, that Abilene shouldn't have received it. But so far, the Biden administration has only given or allowed the emergency declaration for 77 of our 254 counties, and pretty much all 254 counties had severe damage, whether it was busted pipes or down the valley where they lost half their crop, their citrus crop. In this area, I mean, people who have busted pipes and sheetrock that needs to be replaced. So these are all issues that we have to address, and we're not going to have them all addressed by Friday or the following Friday, but before we leave, on the big issues we will address in the system, but in the short term, addressing the bills, addressing FEMA, addressing all those issues to get people help. Between your congressmen, your U.S. senators, and the governor's office, we will all be pressing FEMA for all we can get.
Hi, Daniela from K-Texas. I have two questions.
Yes,
so the
ma'am.
first one I have, like you mentioned, a lot of people are suffering, and a lot of people have water damage because of broken pipes. Some of those people don't have renter's insurance and lost everything.
Right.
So what's being done to help them recover, and how can they recover?
Well, right now we're gathering that data to find out. We know it's a big issue, but we're going to have to gather the data and find out who they are. the ones who have or don't have insurance, and going back to the earlier question, to get the federal government to step in. And we will, this is just part of this long list of solutions, but those are the kind of issues that we need to address sooner than later, and are going to do our best to help people out. One of the problems, even if everyone even had insurance, it's tough to get people to come find plumbers and sheetrockers. It means the manpower. We did put a waiver on for retired plumbers, for example, that they don't have to go through their test again to come back and start working. We're allowing people to come in from out of state, but I do want to caution everyone. Make sure that the person you get to fix your plumbing is a licensed plumber. This is a time that people from around the country, and some in Texas, will come and scam folks. Be sure that you're comfortable with the person you're dealing with, and make sure their license is valid, because that would only make the problem worse. But no, that's part of the tragedy of this. I will also say in the future, I hope renters get renters insurance, because sometimes they may have been okay, but it leaked from up top, and now they got to work with the landlord, and that can take time. But we're keenly aware of that, and we'll do everything we can to address that as quickly as we can.
And people are obviously angry by this, you know, how
Sure.
they've been affected. People have died. People want someone to blame. So who failed Texans?
It was a perfect storm of a lot of issues. And by the way, I'm mad too. So, we lost power for 2 days. I had a generator backup that I bought years ago. It came in handy, but I didn't have internet. I didn't have phone. I didn't have water. My family, most of my family were in the same situation. We all experienced this. It was a shared experience. But I'm not mad on behalf of my family. I'm mad on behalf of all the families in Texas. And so I would say early on, and I was not here in Abilene, obviously, but I don't know how prepared people were. You can't predict tornadoes, but big storms like hurricanes, again, which you don't get up here, but in the southern part of our state, when a storm is coming, for 3 days, the weathermen are saying it's 3 days away, it's 2 days away. Go fill up your gas tank, fill up your generator if you have one, get water, get food. This time, and it wasn't the weathercaster's fault, but the storm was far worse than anyone, or at least most, predicted. So I think part of it was that people don't look at a winter storm the same as they would look at a natural disaster like a hurricane or a tornado. And that's what was coming. It was a storm, it was a cold front, a high or low, I'm not sure which it was, out over Del Rio or El Paso. And so part of that was, I think some people weren't as prepared because the information was not as it should have been, whether it's from the state, whether local, wherever. Number two, ERCOT obviously made, as I said, mistakes early on. Their main job is to not let the grid fail. So when they reduced power, as I said, they reduced power to some of our critical infrastructure that was producing gas. So that would have been fewer plants that went down. And then we have to, and there may be other mistakes that they made. Then we have to look at the equipment, the winterization of those plants. My question, okay, if I turned off your electric, did you have a generator to back it up? Were the generators big enough? And then we have to look at the pipelines. Again, natural gas doesn't freeze, but were there cracks in the pipeline that we knew? And of course, there's always going to be cracks in pipelines when they go all over the state, but we need to do a better job of that. Then you go to the generators, the people who produce the power. Did they winterize their plants properly? Because most of those, not most, but a lot of the plants that shut down, they didn't have the natural gas to power their plants, and they didn't have the water. And so their equipment froze. So they're a part of it. And then your local providers, think of it as this way. Walmart doesn't make the products. So Walmart's kind of like ERCOT. They get products from someone who makes the products, which would be our gas producers and our generators, and they bring those online and they ship them out to your home, and that would be your local, whether it's Entergy or Encore or CenterPoint or one of the other companies that deliver it to your house. And they're the ones who were tasked with making the decision when ERCOT says you got to pull down your power because we're down to 50,000 megawatts and we have demand for 69,000. We're going to blow this whole thing up. So those companies had to make decisions, and I think they were in the toughest position because they don't make the power, they just deliver it. And so did they make those right decisions? So everyone, and then the legislature, Again, in 2011, they made recommendations, or we made recommendations. I was there in 11 as a senator. Did we monitor it as closely as we should have? Look, we're in charge at the legislative level of 6 million kids in public schools, or almost that many, and 1,200 school districts, and 9,000 campuses, and 600 hospitals, and healthcare centers, and nursing homes. We can't be looking over the shoulder of everyone we ask to do something. That's what we depend on the PUC and ERCOT to do, and they tell us they're doing it. And for 10 years, we would have no reason to think they didn't, because it had not failed like this, 4-hour, 8-hour blackouts, maybe a 12-hour blackout, rare. And we may not have a weather event like this in the winter for another 25, 50, or 100 years, but we could have it next winter. So we have to be better prepared. So that's why I'm not letting a bill come to the floor that leaves any doubt of what we expect. But today, we don't know what to expect, because we have to get the answers from everyone. I'm leaving here and going to Midland to meet with some of the people on that side of the industry. I'll be meeting with those who deliver it. I'll be meeting with those who generate it. So we will leave no stone unturned. So I would say it was a shared perfect storm of a Cat 5 ice storm.
So who specifically is responsible?
No, I just gave you the answer. It's everyone played a part in this at some level of a system failure. A system, by the way, that up until last week, people called the model of the country. We have some of the cheapest power in the country. That's why companies move here, because our power is cheap. Had worked, and it didn't work last week, so we have to go back to the drawing board. But here's what I'm taking responsibility for. I'm putting it on my shoulders to fix it. I couldn't have fixed all those things that happened or seen everything that was happening along the line. I can't be looking over every shoulder of every person. But we're going to have the monitoring in place. The PUC is going to have to take a different tack. ERCOT may have to be reformed, more winterization. I'm going to be sure that happens. I'm going to carry that on my shoulders. I know the governor wants to get it done, the speaker, but I'm just saying, for me, there's a verse in Matthew that I talked about at church yesterday, Matthew 20:26. Those who wish to lead must serve. So I'm a public servant, and we all now have to be leaders. And I intend to do that as president of the Senate. It's just I'm taking on the responsibility. The buck's going to stop with me in the Texas Senate, and I think the Texas Senate, along with the House, the governor is the governor of the state, but it takes the legislature to address this in statute and to also deal with the fiscal issues. And that's what we're going to do. Thank you all.
Sir, is there any other specifics you can go into detail with us about how specifically we're going to take control of the power grid?
No, because that's what the hearings are for. And these hearings aren't going to be like, okay, we're doing it Thursday and Friday, then that's it. This is going to be ongoing on these big macro issues. This is going to be this whole session. And if we don't pass the legislation that's right, then we'll go into a special session. We're going to do it right. But I can't, that's what the hearings are for and the investigation's for. And I also want to be sure, and I'm not accusing anyone of doing anything, but I want to be sure that there was nothing that happened that shouldn't have happened in regarding the prices and the markets and the traders. Because the last thing that we should have happen in a situation like this is for anyone to take advantage of this situation to make a buck. And we're going to track all of that. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.